We begin on this Friday the 13th with Mitt Romney forced out of hiding on the campaign trail. Yes, with word this afternoon that Mr. Romney is sitting for interviews any minute now back in New Hampshire with all three major television networks, along with CNN and Fox News, to air later tonight. Indeed, it was probably inevitable after more questions and concerns continued to be raised about Mr. Romney and his much vaunted private sector experience at Bain.
Mitt Romney and the continuing questions over when he ceded control of Bain Capital.
Can you tell me why Mitt Romney had a Swiss bank account?
No, I can't. I
exactly.
But why are you?
I'm a little surprised that he only released a year's worth of tax returns. That's kind of perplexed me because this is the first time in, I don't know, more than 30 years that anybody running for president has only done that.
I think it is entirely appropriate to look at that record and see whether, in fact, his focus was creating jobs. And when you look at the record, there are questions there.
Yes, Mr. President, there are questions. For instance, if Romney had no role at Bain after 1999, why did he say in a June 2002 appearance before the Massachusetts State Law Ballot Commission that during his Utah-based Olympic service there were, quote, a number of social trips and business trips that brought me back to Massachusetts, board meetings, Thanksgiving and so forth. Board meetings, Thanksgiving and so forth. One of the many questions raised. You see what I mean about those network interviews being inevitable? Though the day began with Mr. Romney having no events and seeming to rely solely on his surrogates. Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, America's Mayor Rudy Giuliani, Sunshine State Golden Boy Marco Rubio, Congressional Budget Guru Paul Ryan, all out there pressing the flesh on behalf of the presumed Republican nominee. Yes, even his former presidential rivals are getting out there. Tonight, Rick Perry will take his cowboy boots to Nevada's Silver State Stampede to lasso Romney's supporters. Let's hope he doesn't step in it and revert to some of his former talking points.
They're just vultures. They're vultures that are sitting out there. I have no doubt that Mitt Romney was worried about pink slips, whether he was going to have enough of them to hand out, waiting for the company to get sick. And then they swoop in. They lost their jobs, their health insurance. They lost their severance pay. They eat the carcass. They leave with that, and they leave the skeleton.
I'm telling you, it is scary out there. With the Bain battle, the tax thrashing, it's no wonder Romney's been laying low until today. He hasn't faced the public since making his organ-accompanied Phantom of the Opera exit from the NAACP early on Wednesday. But now it seems he'll face the music. And just like you, we cannot wait to see what comes out of it. Let's bring in our panel. In Washington, MSNBC political analyst Karen Finney. And here in New York, Michael Crowley of Time magazine. In fact, are you with us in New York, Michael?
No, I love New York. I wish I was. I'm in Washington.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought so. But thank you. Karen, I'm getting visions of Romney's Boston headquarters looking like something out of a Scooby-Doo episode, scrambling on Friday the 13th to get away from the ghost of Bain by suddenly scheduling 5 network interviews. Is that about right?
How about that? Yeah, you don't actually do 5 network interviews unless you know you're in real trouble. No doubt they have some internal numbers and some suspicions that looking at even the public polling that these attacks and this line of questioning, frankly, is working and is really eroding both the confidence that people have in this campaign, not only in the trust in the candidate, but in the campaign's ability to respond and deal with these kinds of questions, particularly given that these are things that have been out there for a very long time.
And Karen, you know that experience of responding. Michael,
Yes.
Michael, you know, he's doing these interviews, but Mitt Romney can say whatever he likes. It's his tax returns that people want to see. But is it possible that the reason for why Romney was still listed as the 100% owner and shareholder of Bain for 3 years from 1999, is that because, on the one hand, he wanted public office, but he also wanted a private equity income? He wanted to have it all, and that's why this is what we see.
I think it's possible. I mean, there's clearly a problem here. There is, at best, a gray area. I'm not sure it's quite as damning as the Obama campaign is saying. I mean, you know, some people have argued that the language on the SEC forms could amount to boilerplate and not be that significant. I think that we need to learn a little more about the context. But I do think that the picture that is emerging is that Romney tried to have it, tried to paint the most favorable impression depending on which audience he was talking to.
Michael, you almost said he tried to have it both ways. That's what I'm putting to you.
Well, yes, or rather that may be true, but also that he kind of changed his emphasis depending on who he was talking to, and I think that's been true of him throughout his political career. It's true of a lot of politicians.
Sure.
So that the story changes a little bit depending on where the advantage lies, and that is actually kind of a character problem.
But here's the thing, guys. At a bare minimum, I mean, having worked in the private sector myself, there's a little bit of having it both ways or hedging your bets, right? Because you're doing the Olympics and you're thinking, well, maybe afterwards I'm going to go back, so I want to kind of keep my foot in there. Here's the problem. That is a set of rules that is only available to the 1% in this country. 99% of us, that's not how it works. We don't get to say, I'm going to keep my job over here in this paycheck and get some money while I go over there and do this other project. That's not how it works for most people. So even at the bare minimum, trying to explain this, and I think this is something the Romney campaign knows, it just doesn't sound right to most Americans because, again, it's not the way most of us live our lives.
But, Karen, the irony here is that if Romney had followed his hero's example, and I'm talking about his father, George Romney, and released 12 years of tax returns, all of this Bain business, all of it, would have been cleared up, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
But here's the problem. He appears to prefer secrecy. That's at the absolute essence of what the issue is here. It's secrecy rather than transparency.
That's exactly right. And it also suggests that the campaign at some point made a calculation that revealing what was in those documents could be more damaging than taking the hits for not revealing, which, of course, all that does is make everybody continue to ask these questions. And it does. The other big problem that these guys have, and I'm sure that on these interviews that we're going to see later today, Romney is going to, try to seem like he's being very open and, very forthcoming. We'll see if he actually does it or not and gives any straight answers or not. But the problem is this all also plays into a craven politician, this narrative of somebody who he's for abortion, then he's against abortion, then he's for gay rights and he's against gay rights, right? This person that's kind of been all over the spectrum in terms of the positions that he's taken, given where the political winds were going. That's the major problem for this guy.
So I want to put this to both of you, Michael first. If you were granted this great opportunity to have an audience with the great man, I would dearly love to do so. What questions would you ask him about this specific issue? Michael.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I agree with Karen. I think releasing the tax returns, even if he did nothing wrong with Bain, it just opens an opportunity for so many questions. I'm sure his finances are incredibly Byzantine and complicated. It will invite hundreds of new questions. That's why he doesn't want to do it. To your specific question, Martin, I would say that I would ask him what was his managerial involvement in the specific cases that the Obama campaign has identified where companies that Bain invested in sent jobs overseas or laid people off or saddled companies with debt and kind of threw them, as Rick Perry was saying, kind of the carcasses on the side of the road. So you would have a few specific companies and say, what was your managerial involvement? Did you have any input on the specific decision-making about the fate of those companies and those jobs? That's really what this is about. That's really what, the Obama campaign is saying is significant here, is what is his understanding of how you run companies, how you treat workers in America, what the values of Bain were. And that really is the question mark we don't know right now. What was his, apart from what is on a piece of paper, what was his day-to-day specific managerial involvement?
Absolutely. Karen?
I would ask him why it is that he would invoke his father's legacy when it comes to speaking to the NAACP and talking about his record on civil rights and following that example, and yet he won't follow his father's example when it comes to something so serious as transparency.
Okay, Michael, I want you to speculate with me for one moment again, because Romney didn't release a single tax return when he ran for governor in 2002. So I put it to you, do you think that when Romney was reflecting on this election, he thought, I'll just do exactly the same thing as I did last time? Because, remember, he won the last time. He didn't give any information, and he won. So did he go into this presidential election thinking, you know what, I did it last time, I'll do it again, and I stand a good chance of winning this election?
Well, he may have. If he did it, he was delusional. The presidential stage is so different from even a high-profile statewide race in a big state. But I think he had to have advisors who were telling him that that just wasn't going to happen. And honestly, I don't know what his game plan for this is. He may have understood all along that he had no good options. I do think Karen put her finger on something. The fact that he is so resistant to releasing more returns, it may not be that there is anything illegal, that there was tax avoidance, but I suspect that these documents are massive, extremely complicated, and open to unfavorable interpretations. And their feeling is, as soon as we put them out, there's 100 new questions, and it never ends. We would rather just take the hit on secrecy.
Karen.
You know, there's another thing in here, though. Remember, the first time when he ran for the Senate, he lost. Why? Because those Bain ads were devastating, right? So his campaign has made a very strong point about this 1999 cutoff point, because it's that post-1999 time frame when a lot of these activities, and I'm sure that's when a lot of his taxes got very complicated with all these various holdings. So then he runs for governor and he doesn't release anything. So again, I think they're also trying to follow. They know that what is in there, even if it's legal to the letter of the law, is just not going to look good and is not going to tell the story of a guy who was a job creator. It's going to tell the story of a guy who was a wealth creator. I think that's a big piece of it. In addition to that, I think the Obama campaign is exactly right that, I mean, it doesn't sound right to people that you would sign your name to an official document that goes to the SEC.
It doesn't sound right to me, Karen. I'm sorry. It just doesn't sound right to me. That you file a document in full knowledge and it lives for 3 years, but you claim you've played no part, even though you're 100% owner of the company.
Well, that's exactly right. You know, the other thing in communications, having been through crisis communications a few times, you know, it's the drip, drop pieces coming out that just kills you. And that's part of why I think, the Romney campaign is trying to do these interviews to change gears here, because the little, you know, just as I was coming on the air, BuzzFeed was reporting a story about other new documents that say something else. And there's another story out there about another guy who said, yeah, well, he was at the Olympics. I reported directly to him. So this is going to continue to, you know, drop out unless they can really get their arms around it, and it's going to kill them.
Karen Finney and Michael Crowley, fabulous, the pair of you. Thank you so much.